the common misconception is that you can only apply for Social Security benefits for like one thing. Someone might say, I have bipolar and I want to apply just for my mental health. And my response to that is, let's throw the whole kitchen sink at them. Anything and everything that you think is keeping you from working could, erode your ability to go to work. So instead of just focusing on one thing, let's look at everything.
Hello, everyone. It's time for another episode of the Ramos Law Difference Makers podcast, where I, your host, Dr. Jim Hoven, have the chance to visit, meet, and actually learn from people who are doing amazing things in the community, some of them locally, some of them hyper-locally, but some of them nationally. And that's what I get to do today. Today, I am speaking with someone who is helping people when they are at some of the worst times in their lives or things that they're not going to get through, and they need a champion, they need assistance. And today, I have that champion. I have Miss Jen Morgan, who started, found, owns, works on, and takes care of everything through her company called Impact Disability Law. And so as we get started today, please make sure that you listen to this with your heart, not just your head, that you're going to hear stories. We're going to talk about concepts that hopefully never affect you or impact you, but someday they might. So as we get started on this, again, this is one that you're going to want to share with someone if you know someone in this situation. If you have questions about it after the episode, please send them to us, and we'll make sure we get those answered. But without further ado, Jen, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Jim. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely.
It's a very generous introduction. There's been a lot of people who have helped in this journey that is now Impact Disability Law. So I wish I could take all the credit, but I definitely can't.
Well, as we get started,
Yes.
First, would you tell us what Impact Disability Law does and kind of how it stretches across kind of Social Security issues, this kind of stuff, and how you got into it? I love someone's backstory on how they got to choose this area of making a difference.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you so much. So Impact Disability Law started in 2017. Interestingly enough, I have an aunt who has a very successful practice in Houston, Texas. So I learned a little bit more about what she does.
Same type of law?
Same type of law, okay. Social Security disability. And she kind of helped and showed me the ropes. And then along the way, I've had several other mentors who have really helped me grow, not only as a disability lawyer, but also as a business owner, which yes. I'm sure is,
two different
things.
And you need two different skill sets,
yes,
by the way.
Exactly. But yeah, Impact, we focus primarily on claimants seeking benefits from the Social Security Administration if they are unable to work, basically. So that's our bread and butter. That is all that we do. It's very niche and it's very narrowly focused, but we feel like if we can be the experts on that and do that well, then we can help as many people that need help.
Is that a big group that need help? And can you define what someone looks like who might need these benefits and their process?
Sure. So in order to qualify for Social Security disability, you need to have worked the 5 out of the last 10 years. That's what we call work credits.
And full-time, meaning full-time?
Paid into FICA, yes. Okay. Yes, it will actually be registering as work credits. And then you need to have a disability that will last longer than 12 years and that could result in death. And really the key to this is the medical documentation. So consistent treatment with medical providers, with doctors. If you can, be with a specialist, that's usually seen as very helpful for the disability examiners at Social Security Administration and the judges that might be hearing a case. But it's the medical evidence and being able to tie that to why someone cannot work. But those are kind of the basic qualifiers for.
So does that mean two things, I guess? One, is there a grading scale of severity that would determine someone were eligible for this amount of benefits versus this amount of benefits based on the eligibility of two things: severity of injury or disability or whatever, however that categorizes, but two, time? Because what I'm hearing you say, if they have to have 5 years of working stuff, are they not eligible for disability for 5 years?
No. So basically, it's just that if you've paid into the system, it operates like a big insurance program.
Okay.
So if you've paid into the system for 5 out of the last 10 years, and it's what's called a date last insured, but it's kind of like a statute of limitations, where if you've expired after that date, then and your medical records don't show that you were disabled before that date, then unfortunately you're out of that eligibility And I think it's set up so that, people can't say that they were disabled 20 years ago and then go seek benefits from the government. It makes sense. So it has to be fairly recent, fairly relevant, but you just have to prove that you were disabled on the day before that date last insured. So it typically expires 5 years after someone stops working full time.
Okay. And presumably because they stopped because of the issue.
Most of the time, I would say I've got some very tough clients who like to continue trying to work, which I completely admire. Yeah. However, in order to be eligible, you have to be working under what's called substantial gainful activity, or SGA. And for 2023, the year that we're in now, it's $1,470 a month before taxes. So you have to make sure that you're earning under that. So I do have some clients who continue to work part-time, even though they're seeking benefits, just because they're really tough. And obviously, this process takes about 2 years on average. So it's really, really hard to go without income.
Through
yes.
2 years. Yes. Do you think that's reasonable, or is that red tape? Like, obviously we'd like it to be 2 months, but is that?
I think it's completely unreasonable.
Yeah.
The timing issue is one of the biggest struggles that I would say I have with just setting that expectation with my clients, because the biggest question I'm asked is, what am I supposed to do in the meantime?
Mm-hmm. And they can't do too much because then they can't qualify.
Exactly.
Man.
So, it's one of those things where a lot of clients fortunately have family that they can rely on, or if they've got a boss who is forgiving and will give the accommodations and understand. But most of the time people are waiting for 2 years, and that can put them in some severe financial strain.
Yes, especially as costs rise, right? We're living in a time now where everything just seems to keep going up. And can they stack benefits? In other words, if they qualify for food stamps or other public assistance, does that count against the money that they're quote unquote earning, or?
Sure. So there's two programs there's a lot of other disability programs, but the two main programs that people will apply for, one is SSI, and that is a Title 16 program. It's a needs-based program. And so you can stack benefits in the sense of, get benefits simultaneously, but there might be an offset, meaning you might have a reduction of your benefits. SSDI is the work credit program that I was kind of talking to you about. And so your assets don't matter, and you wouldn't be offset, but you probably also wouldn't qualify for food stamps or something like that if you were only applying under Title II.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
And how about like we were talking about earlier, for the amount that someone would receive for these benefits, does it depend on how much they were making at the time?
Yes, it does. For the work credit based program, yes, it does. It depends on their salary. It's called a PIA, a primary insurance amount. So if you're curious, you can call the Social Security Administration and ask what would that amount be, but it's a PIA.
Okay. And so basically if you were making $50,000 a year, it's a different cap amount than if you were making 100 versus 200, et cetera, et cetera.
Yes, that will affect the amount that you receive monthly.
That makes sense. That makes sense. And what are some of the most common causes or reasons for disability that you see?
Yeah, so I will say that I have clients who have all types of mental and physical disabilities. And the common misconception is that you can only apply for Social Security benefits for like one thing. Someone might say, I have bipolar and I want to apply just for my mental health. And my response to that is, let's throw the whole kitchen sink at them. Anything and everything that you think is keeping you from working could, erode your ability to go to work. So instead of just focusing on one thing, let's look at everything. Do you have back pain? Do you have a problem sitting? Do you have issues standing up all day? Anything that, would prevent you from working. And so that's one thing that I am always trying to educate my clients on is when you go to the doctor and you're struggling with something that is truly keeping you from working, make sure you're mentioning that, because what's documented in your medical evidence is what helps you win these cases.
Yes.
So that's a big thing. Even if you are an unrepresented claimant, trying to seek these benefits through Social Security, it's key that you get your doctor's opinion about why you can't work into your medical records. And that's really hard. One of my mentors always says, we're answering a vocational question, can you work full time, with medical evidence? And so as you probably know, that is not always going to tie together.
Right.
And so on my website, we actually have special forms that clients can take to their doctor that can answer, very Social Security specific questions. How long can you stand for at one time? How long can you sit for at one time? How long can you walk walk for?
Yes.
Would you need excessive breaks from work because you had doctor's appointments or you needed to use the restroom excessively? Those types of things.
That's so interesting, because from my provider side, when I would do consultations, I would ask people, in training, we're saying it goes OPPQRST, right? What's the onset, the provocative and palliative factors, the quality, the setting, and the timing.
Oh, interesting.
And so
I've never heard that before.
Yeah, we would always ask that to our patients, and then we need to go deeper into the qualifying questions. So if someone says, for example, I have sharp pain, okay, is the sharp pain over 25% of the day, and what happens, and does it radiate anywhere? And so you go through all this whole thing. And hearing what you say is, it's critical that the doctors be very cognizant and intentional, because they don't know how their messaging could mess that up. We see it in PI all the time,
sure,
where if the doctors are too busy and they get in a hurry and they just give general information, what we say, and I'm sure this will resonate with you, we tell people, we were just lecturing the Colorado Chiropractic Association. We were teaching documentation. Dr. Ramos and I were just a few weeks ago. And one thing that our big message is, look, you guys write the story. Mm-hmm. The attorney tells the story. Mm-hmm. But if your story is poorly written,
yes,
it can't be told well on the other side.
Yes.
So I imagine there's probably something that goes to be said of you educating your clients. And I don't know how directly, how much interface you have with the providers, but tell them how important it is to document these. Mm-hmm. But I think for the use of our show today, it's upon the person listening or watching, mm-hmm, if they're feeling something, to have those conversations with their doctor, like, this is really hurting me from working in this way. Yes.
And I think that that's key. And the documentation piece is key. And so some pieces of advice that I give, you don't have control over what the medical providers are going to put in your record, mm-hmm, but you do have control over how you communicate. However, mm-hmm, that can be affected by how quickly you're seen by the doctor. And so, just saying that you're struggling with pain in one area one time is not going to get us across the finish line for a Social Security disability case. So making it relatable in the sense that when I open a water bottle or when I try to hold my coffee mug, my hands are so weak that I drop it, or I can't open it, or it hurts. One thing, and I would be interested in your perspective as a doctor, is utilizing technology in the sense of the patient portal. So if you feel like you're being rushed when you're at the doctor, which is really no fault of anyone's, it's just, there are a lot of people that need to be seen by that provider. Mm-hmm. They have a limited amount of time. They have to balance all of that. Can you write a quick note in your patient portal to your doctor and say, when I get there, can we address these things? I'm struggling with this.
Absolutely.
It helps clients who are, I forgot to tell them that, or this is a memory, or, something like that. So I think that's a really good tip. I don't know if that would annoy the doctors, but it's a way to kind of be accountable to yourself that you're not going to forget anything, mm-hmm, but also remind your provider, and maybe they know ahead of time going in what needs to be addressed.
Yes,
at that
and I think that's brilliant. I've not thought about it from that perspective. And from, when I was in all the depths of practicing, mm-hmm, as opposed to doing what I do now, patient portals weren't a thing, especially in the chiropractic side. They were just coming into hospitals and all that kind of stuff. And so now they've matriculated out into smaller and smaller and smaller clinics. And one thing that I would always tell people is keep a journal of what you're feeling, yes, and what you're doing, and then bring that in, because you can include that on the record if you bring that to me as the doc, and yes, I go, oh yeah, let's make sure we put that in. I can't open this jar without significant fatigue or without dropping it or something. That's another good way that you can just get it in there, yes, in that form. But I love your idea of the patient portal. In fact, with one of my providers, because I am old school, I'm like, oh yeah, this now, just put it in the portal. I'm like, okay, well, you have to educate me how to get to the portal, right?
They really have become pretty user-friendly, the
Very
portals.
Much so.
And so I encourage every one of my clients, sign up for them, make
yes,
sure that you utilize them, review your notes after, and make, mm-hmm, sure that it accurately reflects. One of the biggest things is, people will be asked, are they a drinker? And it's from what I can tell, when the doctors are doing it or the nurses are doing it, they're going through pretty quickly and checking like radial buttons or something like that. So something, yes, could be missed on a review of symptoms, and mm-hmm, just having a second set of eyes on it and make sure it accurately reflects, yes, that can really, really help a disability case.
And I can only imagine, this brings up a great topic. Imagine this. Someone says, do you drink? Do you use tobacco? Mm-hmm. Do you use recreational, yes, drugs? Do you use prescription drugs?
Right.
And you put yes, and 1 teaspoon of Robitussin or something.
Yes.
But it goes yes, 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 yes. I have seen it. I have seen it, Jen, where people will take that information and say, oh, here's a reason why this person's doing this and this, because they have an alcohol problem. They have daily use of alcohol. Nothing could be further from the truth.
Yes.
Or God forbid you're going through depression and you take a single episode of, let's say, an antidepressant medication. Now all of a sudden you're labeled as taking
Definitely.
that. And I think that's do you have to fight with that?
I would say yes, because of the way that the administration, Social Security, will write decisions or write denials. They do cherry pick out of the record. And so I would say that that's something I'm constantly looking at are, where have there been reports in medical records that might skew what's actually going on. A good example is Social Security is a federal law, so marijuana is not legal federally. When there are, in states where it is legal, there's kind of this dynamic that is, okay, if you're using marijuana to treat, but this is a federal law, there's a rub there. And so being able to really just kind of coach clients through that. I'm not a doctor. I just read medical records a lot of my day. And I know what gets the attention of Social Security, and I know, hopefully how to just help my clients communicate what's really, really going on, and really just, I think another thing too is my clients live with this, and so maybe they don't realize that it's not normal to have constant back pain or constant numbness in their hands or their feet. And they feel like they might just sound like a complainer or a broken record. But when you can establish longitudinal data over the last 2 years that you've consistently struggled with this pain or this numbness, and it's affecting your ability to work, that's really where the sweet spot is in terms of documentation.
Oh, beautiful.
So yeah, the other misconception that I think is you would find interesting is clients will say, well, I have this diagnosis, so that qualifies me for benefits. And yes, a diagnosis might help, but it's the symptoms that are a result of the diagnosis that are really key. Some people live with fibromyalgia and they can still work. Some people have it and it's excruciating, or it's tiring, or they have constant fatigue. And so, on those more subjective diagnoses, really reporting to your doctors, to your providers, what that feels like in your body.
Is that harder for you are there diagnoses that you get more pushback from the administration than others? Like if someone has a major trauma, they fall off of a balcony while doing windows and they break their neck, guess what? We get it, right? It's a horrible situation that's going to last forever. But something like fibromyalgia that is kind of, we'll call it a open can, a trash can diagnosis. If you don't exactly know, throw fibromyalgia in there. Is that something that you find pushback where you're going to have to show me why to A, allow benefits, or B, to extend them past a certain date? Yes,
I would agree that is, when you have an objective study and you can say, okay, my pain is related to this MRI, that's certainly easier for someone to approve, a judge to approve, or a disability examiner to approve than, these fibromyalgia or POTS or things where it feels like they are petri dishes, or they're just getting these, they don't know what's wrong. It's frustrating for my clients because they can't figure it out. And then you have this batch of medical records that, doctors are really struggling with what is the diagnosis. And so if you don't even have a diagnosis, just continue to hammer home, these are my symptoms. This is what I'm experiencing. Yeah.
Do you get a lot of denials for malingering? And for those of people that don't know what malingering is, it's basically where someone is accused of or labeled as faking it, right? Is that something that the records, when you're applying and helping these people walk through the system, where they're like, no, we're not going to do that?
That's a really good question. I would say early on in my career, it was, you take all of the clients that you feel like that you can help. And as I have grown in, my practice and my ability to advocate for my clients, I've really found that it's best that you take on clients that have the strongest cases at the outset. Because to me, if you do that, then you're not setting clients up for failure, where you have to go through this grueling and kind of invasive process for 2 years, and then at the end it results in a denial. I would rather advise someone at the outset, hey, let's wait on this. Let's make your case stronger. Maybe it's just not time yet. I don't see the severity. I do believe that you're struggling, that this is, affecting your ability to work, but I just don't see this rising to the level of something that's going to catch Social Security's attention for an approval.
Yes.
And that's hard because I want to help everyone. I don't want to turn anyone away. I can't judge what somebody feels like in their body. I can just go off of what the medical records say.
Right.
So yes, I would say that I don't have a lot of that happen in my practice, just because what we take is really, we believe that we have to take strong cases so that we're not hurting ourselves or hurting our clients.
What does that look like? If someone were listening, they're like, I haven't been able to work the way I want to, but I don't know if my situation would rise to the level of something that would be considered. Can you give some criteria that either really help make a case or really help someone say, man, this needs more time?
Sure. So obviously someone needs to be not working over SGA, which is the $1,470 a month. That's going to increase a little bit for 2024. So
and that's nationally, right? Because we're talking national law, national, you work across the country.
Yes. So I have clients everywhere. And that was even pre-COVID, but then COVID really did allow for me to expand my practice because I can practice virtually in any state. But yes, the $1,470 a month is national, and that's hard because you can barely live off of that in places like California or Colorado even right now. New York, those places. So I would say that they would need to be not working over the SGA, and then I would say that our intake criteria is something where we ask a lot of questions about, well, how are you seeing providers? If somebody's not going to the doctor, it's really going to be hard for us to help them. How long have they been treating with their doctor? Has it been consistent? Do they just see a primary care provider one time a year? Or has that primary care provider referred them to, specialists or other types of treatment where we've got consistent documentation that shows the severity of that? So I would say that's the big thing.
That's the big one.
Mental health is hard because those records are written in more of a rehabilitative fashion. So I was just looking at some records this morning where it's so-and-so will meet their goal of not having an anger outburst 50% of the time. And you can imply a lot by that statement.
Sure.
But I do believe mental health providers are constantly writing their medical records in a way that they're doing better. They're not having as many anger outbursts, which, to you and I mean two very different things.
Yes.
And so that's where the forms, we call them medical source statements, but forms by those providers that really direct them to answer specific questions, that's where those come in handy. So,
and does the type, speaking specifically to mental health, does the type of provider make a big difference? Psychiatrist versus psychologist versus licensed counselor?
Yes.
Do all those things have heavier weights with the system?
Yes, exactly. Okay. Exactly. So Social Security Administration will give more weight to a specialist regardless of physical or mental, being a physical health or mental health provider, but specialists will be given more weight or should be given more weight, I would say.
Got it. So then if you're talking in the physical world, if someone's seen a massage therapist, acupuncturist, physical therapist, chiropractor, then it kind of moves up general practitioner, then specialist with pain intervention, and then maybe surgeon. Yes. If you have all of that, that's telling quite the story. But if you only had one to tell, you would want higher up the food chain or scale.
Exactly. And then in terms of age, 50 seems to be a magic number for Social Security. So basically,
to the good of 50 plus?
Yes. It's Social Security really views it as if you're over 50, your body is more broken than if you're under 50.
I can attest to that, by the way. It's true.
Well, it's just, that's something I have to factor in when clients call and ask about the strength of their case. And I can say, hey, you've got this specialist provider you've been treating for a long time, but you're under 50. So we've got some hurdles, to get through. Whereas if you're over 50, it just, and that this isn't, I would say that this is a generality. It's not like, magic number 50, then you automatically get approved. We're fighting for all of our cases very, very hard against the administration.
You've already gotten them. They've cleared your hurdles to get in. Yes. So now it's game on.
Yes, exactly. But so 50 seems to be, kind of a magic number. And then
what about this, Jen? Someone who has gone through horrific trauma, whether it be sexual abuse, mental abuse, that can really mess you up and in ways that don't leave bruises that we can see, right? No broken bones that we can see necessarily, especially down the line if it happened through childhood. What role does that play in the cases that you see?
Yeah, and I feel like I sound like a broken record, so I apologize, but it's really all about documentation.
Yeah.
Whenever I get a client who calls in and they have PTSD or something traumatic happen, I like to tell them, I never want you to have to relive that as you're telling your story to me or as you're telling your story to a judge. But I do need to understand the symptoms that you experience daily. If you've had past trauma with a different gender, so a female working under a male and had trauma even in the military or something like that, does it scare you to be around a male employee? Well, that's half the workforce, so if not more, so we have to be mindful of that. But I try to handle that delicately because obviously you never want somebody to have to relive that.
Correct.
But as an advocate, you do have to highlight where that presents itself. And I like to tell my clients, think about your worst day. And somebody came in and said, hey, I have this job for you. You can go in and here you can go and do it. And here's a job. Just go in and do it for the next 5 days, 8 hours a day. Why would you not be able to do that? Why? Because I really believe the large majority of people want to work. They want to feel productive. They want to feel like they're, adding to society and using their gifts and skills to help others. I really do believe that. And so when I talk to people, I can kind of get a feel for, what is it that's keeping you from doing that? And so a lot of the mental health or the questions about trauma that you're asking really are, what are the symptoms that come out of that trauma? Does being around people trigger some anxiety or some panic attacks? What treatment are you getting for that? Some people can say, oh, I have a panic attack all the time. I just have to stay home. I can't be around people. Well, are you telling your doctor that? Are you
going to the doctor?
Right. Are you going to the doctor? One good thing that I think has come out of COVID is the ability for some of my clients to do the telehealth visits. Well, I would say, being in person is probably much stronger and just better to get treatment. Being able, for some of my clients that really do struggle getting out of their house or being around people, that telehealth really can help, or people that are in more rural communities, being able to visit with people online and talk to their doctor, that's helpful. So
here's a money question.
Okay.
I also want to ask you a homeless question. Okay. So, and I know you probably don't have a lot of homeless clients for some reasons that we can go into, but
sure.
Here's the money question. You can only make $1,500 or $1,400 or change, whatever. You're supposed to get treatment. You can't have what we call gaps in care in PI.
Yes.
And you've got to establish this ongoing care. You don't have health insurance because you can't work.
Yes.
How do you get treatment? How do you pay for treatment?
It's a great question. This comes up daily for our office. Really looking at what resources are. I know Needy Meds, I think it's needymeds.com. They have a list in different areas. I know that there will be some sliding scale offices that will do sliding scale pay or treatment like that.
Stride is really big at that too. Some of these community health centers.
Yes.
Tepeyac, Stride.
However, they're overwhelmed. So a lot of my clients can't even get an appointment for 6 months. And then they're like, Jen, what am I supposed to do?
There we have the gap in care again.
Yes.
Right?
Do your best. I don't know other than, keeping track, like you said, in a journal or notes in your phone. Those types of things, just keeping track of that, really just being the squeaky wheel in terms of getting your health care, being on a wait list, hey, if you have any openings, can I come? But it has... The overwhelm of the system in terms of medical care has been a problem because that documentation is key, and it's hard. It's really hard.
Have you ever seen someone succeed who is in the situation that you and I just shared, where they just don't have the ability, the money to pay, and they can't get into one of these special programs, where they Dr. Googled it and they found resources and they did everything at home that they could. Obviously, they're not getting medications, but they're trying this and they're getting, they're doing yoga and they're trying this and they're doing whatever, right? They followed it. So they can give you a work of what they've done at home. And they could even, which they probably didn't do because they didn't know what we're talking about, but they didn't cite the resource, the day, write down the website. They didn't do all that. But is that possible that...
Unfortunately, no.
No.
I mean, really, you have to be seeing a doctor.
Under provider.
Yeah, I mean, with the exception of, if somebody struggles with seizures, I know there's an app where somebody can track their seizures. But again, you really have to be seeing a doctor. The documentation is just so key. And I wish that it was different, and I wish that there was, more access to healthcare for my clients in that situation. But it really just has to be something that's on the onus of the clients to go to the doctor and make sure that you're trying to find the healthcare that you need.
Yeah. And think about this, the number of people that you and I see every single day on our drives across this city, from wherever we are to wherever we got to go, they're on the corners, they're homeless, they're in shopping carts, they're under trees and benches. Yes. So many of them have a mental and or physical disability that has led them to that point.
Absolutely.
Now, there are some people, they just want to live that lifestyle and they choose that. But most people don't. If you gave them a choice, they would say, no, help me through this.
Yeah. It
sounds like they're the outcast of that system. Is that true?
I would agree. Yes. The other thing is, we have a hard time getting a hold of them sometimes.
Yes, us too.
If their phones get turned off, or or if they can't receive mail. I mean, Social Security still does a lot with mailing forms and mailing. We've tried to help make that electronic just to make it a little easier for people not to have to handwrite 14 pages of forms about what they do all day. But even just accessing that, somebody can't do that from a flip phone. They can't fill out forms. I mean, so we have ways where we can help people, but it truly is one of those things where clients have to help themselves by going to the doctor and staying in contact with us so that we can help them, because it's hard to find clients if we can't find them, obviously.
Right. We deal the same thing here. If someone's been
heartbreaking.
Hit by a car, they're homeless, they hit by a car, they have an incredible case, but trying to connect with them and reach them and get them into the care that they need, it's the same thing. And so hopefully we can all be a little more self-aware and have some compassion for these people, because, man, but for fortune, any of us could be switching places.
It's one moment away. That is true. That's true. But
what about appealing? If you get a denial, what happens? Are you guys done, or you're like, no, we ain't done yet? Like, how does that process work?
Yeah, so let me take you back through kind of the whole entire process.
Please.
There's an initial application.
Okay.
And that takes about 5 to 7 months, sometimes 8 to 12 months, depending on the time of year right now. There's holidays, people are taking days off from Social Security, so they're not processing the applications as fast as they normally do. But that initial application can take 5 to 7 months, if not longer.
Wow.
These statistics are pretty rough, but they're from 2022. I would say 65% of those initial applications are denied.
65%?
Yes, if not more. Then we have 60 days to file what's called a reconsideration appeal. I feel like the reconsideration decisions are like a rubber stamp on the initial. So 84% of those are denied.
Okay.
That takes another 5 to 7 months.
So we're a year in.
Oh yeah, if not more.
Yep.
And then the next appeal, we have another 60 days to file a request for hearing. And that's where nationally about 50% of those cases are approved. Okay. So people don't understand why it takes that long. And I actually don't know the reason. I have some ideas, maybe some conspiracy theories about that. I think that the administration needs to balance the money coming in versus the money going out. I think they might want people to give up. People get one denial and they won't keep fighting. But my advice is, if you have a strong case, you do not give up. You keep fighting. You keep going to the doctor, making sure you have that medical evidence in your chart. It's frustrating. It's frustrating to see clients get denials. Our office really does a nice job not waiting that full 60 days for an appeal. As long as we have the information that we need, updates on doctor's visits, updates to any contact information, those types of things for our clients, we try to file that within a week, where we can kind of cut down that time.
Kick it back in the
framing.
system. Yeah,
yes.
That's great.
Yes. But yeah, I would say most of my clients have to go through 2 appeals before they are approved.
Wow.
Yeah. And I can't really get a rhyme or reason on what cases get, initially approved more than others. I mean, each of the offices, those are handled in different jurisdictions. And so offices look at different things. Their disability examiners look at different things. I can't find the pattern there.
Is there can you see any consistencies in parts of the country where the South tends to approve more than the West Coast, or is there anything like that, or it is just
I wish. I would say the one consistent factor is that over 50, over 55. If you have a chance of getting that initial or that recon approval, most likely it's going to be, at that
once you
age
cross
level.
that age barrier.
Yeah. And here's another thing is if I get a call from someone who I feel like has a great case and they will get approved on their own, I will say, please go file your application on your own. You could save yourself some money in attorney's fees. If you are denied, come back and I will help you. But
good.
go ahead and fill out this application. You just have to provide your work history, your medical information in terms of the doctors that you see, and just give Social Security the opportunity to approve you without having to pay a lawyer. And then, if you're denied, then I can help you after that. So
I was going to ask you that. That was going to be my next question, actually, Jen, is
cool.
Saying, when does someone need to say, I need help with this?
Yes.
Is there some people that are marginal that they need to go right from the get-go,
Sure.
and other people fall under this category that you just described?
Sure. I love this question. So what I would say is I like starting with clients at the very beginning because I can help them set up their case the right way.
Yes.
Meaning, what are the words to use? If you're, when people think, okay, I can only go for mental health or I can only go for my back pain, what would, let's throw the kitchen sink at it. Put everything in there. Also, there's forms like I alluded to earlier. You really don't win disability cases by filling out forms. So people get long-winded in wanting to explain why they can't go to work. And usually the administration will turn that against you into a denial. So you have to be really, really careful about what you're using on forms. So that's where I would want a case from the outset where I can coach clients through that. My paralegals do an excellent job of doing that as well. Just really understanding how to fill out the forms, what needs to be in them, what to make sure that you're highlighting about your activities of daily living, what you can do, what you can't do. One thing that happens in these forms is people will talk about gardening or fishing or riding a bike. And those are their hobbies. That's what they were before, they were in this situation, but that's not what they do now. But the administration can read that as, oh, well, if you can garden, if you can fish, then why can't you go sit at a desk and work or sit on an assembly line and work?
Does it go the other way too? If they can't garden and they can't fish, the things that they used to love to do, not only they had to work and they love to ice skate, is that a combo factor to the good if they can't work and they can't do their...
As long as they're telling their doctor about that and it's in the medical records, right?
Fair point. That's
again,
what we
broken
tell the PI,
record.
Same thing.
Yeah. So that's where I would want a case from the beginning just so that we can help. But again, I feel like a lot of this information is so readily available online, and there's misinformation too, just like anything else. But if I feel like someone has a strong enough case where they can just go file an application and be approved, that's my preference, that they won't, hire us. And then if they are denied, come, and then we can help you through the rest of the red tape bureaucracy.
Well, you have been such a ray of light on this topic.
Thank you, Dr. Jim. I appreciate it.
No, this has been so good and so helpful.
Thank you.
If someone wanted to reach out to you, they wanted to talk to you, to learn more, to ask more, or maybe someone that is going through this process of going to law school and wants to be an attorney, maybe they could use a mentor like you were mentored.
Yes.
How would they get a hold of you?
Sure. So impactdisabilitylaw.com, and our phone number, my email is there. Please feel free to reach out, and if we can help, we will. And if we have other advice, we will give that too. We really, really, truly have the heartbeat just to help others, and striving to do that every day and just to get a little bit better with that every day. So
I certainly feel the heartbeat that you guys have. It's so good. I can see why your practice is super successful, and people from all over the country reach out.
I appreciate it.
So here's my last question.
Okay.
If you had one piece of advice that you've learned along the way, or that someone gave you that helps you today to be the person that you are, to build the life that you've built, what would that be, and would you share it with us?
Oh, there's so many. I want to say consistency. I think
that's mine too.
Really?
It is.
Oh, awesome.
It is.
I think that I was actually just talking to my mom on the way here, and we were talking about that. Just, there are bad days. There are things that life kind of deals or throws at you, and just getting up every day, choosing to have a good attitude, putting one foot in front of the other, just being consistent. And I think, that's where you see big growth, or at least that's where I feel like I've seen big growth, even on the days when you don't feel like it.
And that's the truth.
And that's hard. I'm preaching to myself at that point, because that's really hard to do.
It's funny. I'll share this little story. I do some talks for high school kids, right?
Okay.
Whether through junior achievement or at Cherry Creek in their medical class or whatever. So a handful of these events. And I was asked to do one time, and I was just trying to figure out, well, what would I share? What would I have to offer that might be of value? And interestingly enough, all these concepts start coming out, and all of a sudden a formula popped into my mind. And so I called it the results guaranteed equation. And it goes like this: your actions plus your attitude multiplied by consistency equals results. So the multiplier is consistency.
Yes.
Right? So what you said about even when you don't feel like it, even when you don't want to, you need to make it hey, I don't have to, I choose to.
Right.
And then that becomes consistent, which really magnifies results. That was so good. Thank you for sharing
that. I love that equation. I'm going to steal that.
Please
Thank
steal
you.
it. Absolutely. and again, man, Jen, what a great time. Any parting words, anything that you'd like to share with folks before we go?
I just really appreciate you guys and what you're doing, and just thank you for having me on. And I just hope that, more and more law firms can just be kind of in the business of really trying to help people, because I think we are uniquely gifted with this knowledge base and this experience that allows us to help people. And I just hope that we can continue to do that. So keep on keeping on. Thank you. Thank you so much for having me, and just the questions that you asked and the thoughtfulness. I appreciate it.
It's my pleasure. And for those of you watching, listening, you can tell that this young lady has all the right pieces in place, that if you need this service, please reach out to her. If there's someone that you know who does as well, who has questions, please reach out to Jen as well. And until next time, remember, keep making a difference.